Hi, welcome to KartTV. I'm Neil Schneider, and today I'm here with Chante, our certified Pilates instructor, and her assistant Kai. And today they're going to show you a fundamental exercise to increase ankle mobility, hip mobility, and strengthen the legs, the squat.
We're gonna go over the different variations of your squat and open up the ankles and the hips as well today, starting with probably the harder modifications and then working lower to our easier modifications for any injuries or knee mobility issues. Kai here is going to move into the middle of the mat and have his feet placed hip distance apart. When we have our feet hip distance apart, I'm talking about your hip bones, not the outsides of the hips. So make sure those feet aren't too wide to start. So Kai, bring your feet in a smidge together, maybe an inch closer. Good. Kai's gonna splay his feet outwards, having his big toe, all of the toes down, outside edge of the foot and the heel as kind of his main points of contact in the mat. So again, the big toe, outside edge of the foot, and that heel are gonna be the main points of contact with his foot in the mat and holding pressure down equally through all of those 3 points called the tripod of the foot. For our squat today, we're gonna start with the parallel squat. So his feet are again hip distance apart and he's keeping his knees and toes faced forward. Keeping in mind that a slight turn out of the toes is still neutral in the ankle. So for our setup, Kai's gonna start by hinging out at his hips. He's gonna send his bum back towards this wall behind him without bending his knees. So just crease out at your hips and send your bum back. Good. And then bend your knees over your toes and sink down as low as you can, keeping this same squat form. Good. So this is actually a really good example of what some people do in their squats. Kai, you can't really see from the front, but I'm gonna get you to just turn to the side if that's okay. Good. So Kai in his squat right now is overextending through his low back. You can kind of see that here. So I'm gonna get Kai to just bring his rib cage back in space. There, and then have his head drop. So we want from tail to head a nice long line and not overarching the spine and not over rounding the spine. Belly button is pulled in like that cold water cue. You jumped into an ice bath, you're freezing, your belly button's gonna hug into your spine, your pelvic floor is also lifted. He's anchored through his entire foot and his toes aren't lifting. I think you can squat maybe a little bit lower with your bum towards the floor. And then right about here, you'll notice it's not his knees that are giving out or his hips, it's the ankle mobility. It's quite common for people here in the front side of the ankle to not have enough range of motion to get deep enough. So just go to your limit and then he's gonna press through his entire foot and grow tall, lifting his chest simultaneously as he straightens his knees and brings his hips forward. Okay, sink back down into your squat by hinging at the hips first. Knees go over the toes and you sink down like you're coiling up, condensing your body. Again, keep your rib cage hugged in a little bit. Knit the rib cage in, fabulous. And then press through the ground and stand tall, lifting the chest again at the same time. Sometimes you'll see people start straightening and then lift their chest. You want it to be all in one. Okay, so that's your parallel squat. And then moving forward, we're gonna go into our lateral rotation. So Kai, I'll get you to face forward again. He's gonna bring his feet about shoulder width distance apart, so a little bit wider. Good, so even wider than that. Good, toes are turning out to the sides of the room, and the thighs are spiraling away from each other in the thigh socket, or in the hip socket. So his knees and his toes are now facing outwards to the sides of the room, but again, same squat form. From your hips up, body stays active and stable, neutral. His hips are gonna hinge back. So just the bum goes back. And then bend your knees outwards, sinking down into a deep lateral rotation squat, also known as sumo squat. So here you'll notice his thighs are spiraling outwards and not caving in. He has more weight on the outside edge of his foot, but his big toe is still an anchor for him. Rib cage hugs up a little bit. Good. And then pressing through the feet. Again, you're gonna stand tall, but thighs still spiral outwards. Good. So Kai, you could even probably let your feet go a little bit wider and toes turn out just a smidge more. Good. So going out as wide as feels comfortable for you. Again, Kai's gonna hinge at his hips, thighs spiral out, sink down. Good. And then pause. You're just condensing the body a little bit lower. And then press through your feet. You will feel your glutes turn on without even moving. So put pressure in your feet and then stand tall, chest lifts simultaneously. Okay, and in this one, there's a pulse variation you can do to add more focus on the glutes. And if you have sensitive knees, this is a good modification to work building up the lower body strength and not putting your knees in a compromised position. So Kai, you can face me this way, but stay in your same sumo squat lateral rotation. So feet are about as wide as the mat. Good. Hinging at your hips, you're gonna bend your knees out, sink down into your deep squat. Good. Make sure that you're keeping your rib cage hugged in. And then he's going to thrust his hips forward without moving his knees really. So keeping his knees wide, he's gonna maybe have a hand on the front side of the pelvis and a hand on the back side of the pelvis. He's gonna squeeze his glutes. It's gonna be awkward, but thrust forward, keeping the knees in the same bend. Thrust your hips forward and hinging back. Yep, and thrust the hips forward, body will lift upright. Good, and try to keep the knees in a relatively still position, so it's still just the glutes and sinking down. Lift the chest higher, squeeze the glutes first. Yep, and sinking back down. So his knees are gonna stay in the same bend. He's tucking his tail, scooping forward, and again, training the glutes while keeping knees safe, but also opening up through the front of the hip simultaneously. Okay, and then standing tall. There's one more modification we can do to make this harder. So Kyle, I'll get you to face the camera again in your lateral rotation as well. Sinking down into his squat, his hips go back, knees go forward, over his toes. Good, pause here. Again, belly button is hugged in. You just jumped into an ice bath, so cold, core is tight. For this one, he's gonna lift his right heel up off the floor, coming onto his right toes. Yeah, and then back down. Kai lifts his right heel off the floor and back down. Lifting the left heel up and back down. Notice how he is pivoting on his big toe knuckle and there is no rolling out of the ankle. So you wanna lift it up, kind of like the game of Operation. You're moving between two panes of glass, and if you touch the glass, imagine it would shock you. Doing these for as long as feels good, sinking as low as you can. You'll open up through the front side of the ankle and the hips. Thanks for tuning in to KartTV. I'm Chante, a certified stop Pilates instructor, and those were the different variations and modifications for your squat.